After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
Oh, hey, everybody. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Ben, what's up?
I don't know. I'm just here making podcasts with you, man. Glad to be here. It's episode 100 and something or other, and we're trudging forward in the quarantine to bring you a good show. I'd ask you, Phil, how your weekend was, but I assume you'd just tell me you were just going on walks and probably made some sort of pie or something boring.
That was pretty accurate. I went on a walk. I took Mango for a couple of walks. And see, my wife has been, she follows this kind of famous baker. Her name's Christina Tosi. She runs Milk Bar. She was a judge on MasterChef one season, but she's been doing these like daily baking clubs where she gives you the day before. She's like, here's a bunch of ingredients, and tomorrow we're going to bake something, a surprise thing with these ingredients. And then you tune in live at 2 p.m. Eastern on her Instagram, and she just bakes through a bunch of stuff. And, my wife's been making a lot of stuff. The thing is, my wife doesn't eat a lot of sweets, so she makes all this sweet stuff, and then I feel obligated to eat it. It's I'm gaining weight, Ben, is I guess what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, they're calling it the quarantine 15. It's real, man. I was outside all weekend running around the mountains looking for turkeys and just being with my kiddo. So I don't know that I'm as bad off as you, but boy, it gets me, man. Like my wife just came in here with a giant piece of banana bread with like just covered in chocolate, and I just ate it like a sad man.
It's a serious problem.
It's a serious problem, but you're going to enjoy this episode. Now, you don't want to hear about our problems, but maybe you do. But you're not going to have to hear about much more of that. We are going to bring you a good episode. We got Guy and Ike Eastman from Eastman's Hunting Journal, 2 legends in the game, 2 great dudes, and we're going to talk about an awesome trip we took to the Northwest Territories to track their grandfather's journey up there 50 years earlier. And then the intro segment of the show, we got Spencer Newhart and Anthony Licata from the Meat Eater crew. We got the Mushroom Minute talking about morels. We got all kinds of other stuff. We had a game warden that actually was listening to the show while talking to a suspect about dumping. You'll find out all about that. And the dumper was a fan of Phil the Engineer. So a lot of beautiful things. We got a new podcast called Sheltered Perspective. I just made that up. Phil. You like that? We're going to stick with that?
No,
nothing. All right,
no.
Nothing. We're going to let that go. No Sheltered Perspective. But anyway, there's a segment that is TBD, to be named later in the show. It's a great one. You're going to enjoy it. Episode 100 and something. Say enjoy, Phil.
Enjoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 120. Is it 120, Phil?
I think that's what we determined, but we were talking about the quarantine shows and whether or not those counted as real shows. And you said, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course they do. Are they stepchildren? They're really like a time capsule that I'm sure, you know how people are looking back at articles from like the 1916 flu pandemic? I'm sure 100 years from now when they look back at this, they're going to be listening to the quarantine cast going, wow, shit was weird back then. So, Phil, how you doing over there, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. The weekend was a good refresh, recharge. I'm ready to go this week.
Well, we're joined by Anthony Licata. Say hey, man.
Hey, Ben. Happy to be joining you. Be much better if we were hanging out, but
oh man, I miss you guys.
Yeah.
I miss you guys so much. When all this is over, we should get an apartment together, I think. Maybe just for the weekends. And then the baritone badass. Is that catching on, Spencer Newharth? The baritone badass? I don't think it is.
Not yet. No.
No. Okay. Well, thanks. Well, thanks for joining us. We're gonna get through a lot of stuff. Well, it's weird that we skipped a day and talking to you, but when we're gonna skip 3 or 4 days before we talk to you again. But we're gonna bring you some action-packed shows here of the Hunting Collective a little bit later on. We're gonna get to Ike and Guy Eastman of Eastman's Hunting Journal. They came on. We talked about our journey up to the Northwest Territories some years ago, and the amazing story of the man that was a pioneer, their grandfather, by the name of Gordon Eastman. So we're going to enjoy that coming up here in a little bit. But we got a lot to get to. Number one, Phil, I need you to talk to me about something. I'm trying to determine like what is the next fun thing we're going to do. And at first I was going to assign you no shave quarantine, Phil, where you just don't shave at all during the quarantine. Is that acceptable?
Well, I mean, I've shaved several times, but as of right now, it's been probably 4 days. So I can just keep it going.
Let me see.
Like. See how hideous it looks. Again, you can't tell. You can't tell at all.
Like that's 4 days of growth. Lakata has like 1 day of growth, and he just looks like a werewolf.
I'm in. This is week 4 of quarantine. Started week 4, and I have not shaved since. And yeah, I'm getting woolly.
It looks good. Put your face closer to the screen, Phil.
Oh,
do you have any fluorescent lighting in your home where you could show us? No, that looks. There's nothing.
You can see some kind of
That's nothing, Phil.
This is good for me. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, well, we'll talk about it after. People write in thctmedia.com if you would like Phil to go to no shave quarantine to see if he can do anything with this baby face. So I can't believe that's 4 days. No stubble or nothing.
There's stubble. Listen. I got light coming out this window. If I had a professional setup here, you'd be able to see some shadow happening.
Oh God, maybe I think you might have a condition where your facial hair doesn't grow. We should check that out. All right. Well,
it's called low T, Ben.
Yeah, maybe. I can't wait till we get some low T advertisers on so you can read those.
Oh yeah, I'd be all over that. Personal endorsements coming out the window from
taking your mini green energy chews and your low T. That's gonna be a good mix.
I was a picky eater when I was a kid, and my dad he thought this would work to like convince me to eat certain things like a pickled egg or like a really hot homemade salsa. He'd always be like, "Oh, it'll put hair on your chest." That never like convinced me, but maybe Phil, that's the answer.
Oh
yeah, I mean, I'll try it out. I mean, I already like a strong Scotch and spicy food. I don't know what else. Please send in your ideas, and we'll see if we can make anything work.
That ain't true. You're just trying to name manly things. You don't really do those things.
Oh sure, I love men things like gyms and putting together a shed.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. The she shed. You're a gamer. We know all your tricks. We've peeled all the layers of your onion, Phil. We know what you are now. It's clear to me. We got a lot of emails coming in. Obviously, people are maybe bored and a lot to do. A lot of really pretty funny ones. But there was a guy named Clay Trout that wrote in, and he said he's catching up. He was catching up on a backlog of podcasts, and he missed out on the 100th episode and the giveaway extravaganza, which lasted about 3 months here since we've done that. We've been giving stuff away for a long time. But because he missed the Draw Phil's Voice Face contest, he wanted to write in with just a description of you. And so here it goes. He said, I thought I would hope I could share my vision of Philip T. Engineer. And here's what it would have been. Phil standing there with a baby chest carrier on. In the carrier, a baby Chewbacca holding a Nerf crossbow. On his head is one of those beer hard hats with White Claw in it. In one hand, he's holding Thor's hammer, and the other a leash that goes down to Mango. Yet Mango is, well, a mango. A mango with a dog harness on all 4 legs. I picture Phil with a dark square-framed glasses and a nice, goofy kind of smile. I hope this gives you a fun mental picture and I hope it makes Phil laugh. Laugh, Phil.
Well, the reason I'm not laughing hard is because I'd say about half of that is pretty accurate.
No, yeah. So I'm going to ask Clay to actually draw that up for us. So I'd just like to see that, especially that mango is an actual mango, because that's probably more appropriate than naming your dog after the fruit.
It's still offensive, still a bad take, Ben, but you can keep going on with it. Mango's a great name, huh? Spencer, you think mango's a good name for a dog?
Yeah.
It's like a small lap dog, right?
It is, yes.
I think it works for that. But if this was like a lab that was out there busting up CRP looking for pheasants, it wouldn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, just imagine going like mango back, mango. Like that would never work. So thanks, Clay, for writing in for that. We'll leave Phil alone for a while. I think we should probably go around the room here. It's hard to go around the rooms, plural. Around all 4 of the rooms. I've been drinking more during quarantine than ever. We had a company happy hour on Friday where I think everyone was drinking, but I felt like maybe I did. I had 3 beers during the hour, and I wasn't sure if everybody was drinking that to that intensity. So, like, Spencer, what's the drinking situation over there? It's the hot tub. Are you in the hot tub with different kind of alcohols, or like what's going on?
No, well, I'm a morning hot tub guy, so no drinking in the hot tub during quarantine.
Spencer, can I just say really quick, people give you shit for being a morning hot tub guy. I just want to say that I'm on your team here. If I had a hot tub, I'd be in it every morning. I support you in all of your hot tub endeavors. Okay, continue.
I don't have any children, but it's like the most dad thing that I do, I think, is going in the hot tub.
It sounds incredible.
Yes, we should maybe. The next giveaway is going to be a hot tub party at Spencer's house. THC giveaway. Go ahead, Spencer. Sorry.
As far as the alcohol consumption, I find now that I'm like hanging out with friends, more virtual hangouts. It's like weird that I'm seeing people more often, it seems like, than I was previously, and so with that comes the drinking. So there haven't been a whole lot of sober Friday and Saturdays during quarantine here.
I love it. See, social distancing is it's physical distance, but we're still able to. Thank God it's 2020 when this happened, because we're still able to socially get together. Anthony, what's the drinking situation at your house?
Well, Ben, I didn't count my drinks during our company happy hour because I don't believe in counting drinks. Nothing good comes from that. So I'm just estimating here, but certainly I think the volume has gone up. And for us, a lot of it's tied towards food, right? Because it's going hand in hand. We're cooking a lot. Can't go out to restaurants, obviously. We're kind of bored. My wife likes to cook. She's making elaborate meals. So it's the kind of thing that'd be like, wow, a bottle of wine would be really good with this. So we end up having lots of wine with dinner and some cocktails before dinner. That seems to be what we've fallen into.
Yeah, no, we've definitely fallen into some version of that here. We have smaller kids, so when they go to bed, it just becomes like a rave at our house. Just getting down. And so we last episode of the Quarantine Cast, we asked if anybody had ideas for a nice quarantini that we could come in, and a fella named Scott, he didn't give his last name. Scott is a bartender in Vancouver Island, which is a beautiful place. That sounds like an awesome thing to be. I'm sure he's at home right now, but he said, here is the Ben O.B. quarantine cocktail, quarantini. See if you guys like this. He said 2 ounces of wild turkey rye. We'll go meat eater whiskey. 1 ounce lemon juice, ½ ounce simple syrup, ½ ounce cassis, which is a black currant liqueur, muddled rosemary. Then you combine all those ingredients, you shake them up in a glass with fresh ice, and you add cherry White Claw to the top of it, and garnish with a lemon wheel, rosemary sprig, and a snap pea. Oh, Scott, you son of a bitch! Don't. Yeah. I didn't catch that snap pea part when I read it the first time. All right, I see how it is. You bastard, Canadians, man! I'll tell you, they're mean. How's that sound to you, there, Philip?
That sounds great. I mean, I'd say aside from the White Claw float on top, it sounds a little too I don't know. It sounds a little too bougie for you. It's got like a black currant liqueur and a muddled rosemary. I just think, yeah.
I've never muddled rosemary. Don't intend to.
But it sounds good.
I would just take a shot of, squirt some lemon juice in my mouth, take a shot of Meat Eater whiskey, and then drink a White Claw. And then buy a bunch of snap peas from the store and throw them in the trash, or ceremonially burn them. Either way. Whatever you desire. And I'm sure I'll get some hate mail from the pea lobby, like I always do. But you guys are full of shit. Anyhow, Spencer, is that something you would drink in the hot tub? Quarantini?
No, I don't think so. But I think like a good quarantini would maybe be like a mint julep, because they canceled or they postponed the Kentucky Derby, which I love to watch and bet on. So just to like promote that atmosphere and get in the mood for when the Kentucky Derby comes around, should just have a mint julep.
Yeah, I think when the fall is over, this is going to be like when this quarantine is over, the fall might be jam packed with sporting events. I saw that they moved a couple like the golf majors into the fall, so we might be living the dream come November. Who knows? All right, well, we'll keep drinking. I'm gonna, I'll try this, Scott, and I'll report back at some point this week when I've tried this to see. I probably won't muddle the rosemary, but I could get some cassis in here, I bet, if I look around. So that's okay. So, Spencer, you're kind of like an old man in a young man's body, right? Is that accurate to say?
Sure. I can give you a little glimpse into that. You can see right now, like I'm wearing my First Light coat. Yeah. I've got my boots laced up. As soon as we end this, I'm stepping out to go rock hounding, which feels like a very like retired man thing to do. Oh,
for sure. You have like a retired, like, you know how you would go to your uncle's house, like when you were a kid, and he would be like, come in this room and look at my fossil collection. That's kind of what Spencer's got at his house. You go to his house, he's got like a room in which he's got all his his various collections of things, which is impressive. But I just think, you needed to kind of give people that insight. You're in a mushroom club, right? Here in town?
Yep. I am a member of the Southwest Mycological Association.
I love it. I love it. It's the best. I'm so jealous of your hot tub and your mushroom club, Spencer.
At the happy hour last week, we were talking about the Hideaway Bar, and like, I'm a happily married man. So my version of like picking up a woman at the bar was what happened the last time we were at the Hideaway. This guy was on his computer, and his background was a fly agaric mushroom, which is like a very specific kind of mushroom. Like, this guy knows mushrooms. I could sense it. And so I started talking to him, and he was a member of the club, and that's how I got in. So
that's like one of those clubs you got to know somebody.
That's right. Yep.
That's like oh man, all right. It's like the Illuminati. I like it. And so, like, well, we might as well just describe people what happens in the club. You guys get together. There's definitely no women members, right? There's no. Is everybody over 60?
The worst time of year to join a mushroom club is probably like December, which is when I joined. And so as of now, it's just like a regular newsletter. And I think there's like 147 other emails that are included in this newsletter.
Are they all at AOL.com? Or?
There's many of them that are AOL, like Golden West, whatever your parents got when they signed up for their cable TV.
That's right.
There's a lot of those emails.
All right, I'm in there. Well, we might as well start we got a few new segments coming at you. The Morel Minute is a segment. I just came up with that. Phil, you're going to need to come up with some sort of special sound effect for that, so thank you. We'll wait for that. All right, now we're back. And Spencer, like, you've been rocking out lots of hot tips for Morel mushroom finding. It's coming up. I know you're rock hounding because you just haven't had the time. Well, there's no mushrooms out there to find, or very few of them if we're lucky enough. So give people, as Morel time hits us, give us a little Morel information and then some hot tips. I'll give you 60 seconds.
Okay. So if you wanted to like know exactly when mushrooms are popping in your area, the best thing you could do is to monitor soil temperature. But that's just like not that realistic for a lot of people. They're not going to walk outside and jam a thermometer in the ground and be like, oh, we're almost there. We're past the window. So you should instead rely on some of these like really folksy sayings that are regional dependent. Like if you're in the Northeast, I think it's something like once you start to see the bloodroot begin to flower, then you know the morels are popping. I've heard other people in the East say that like once the turkeys start to strut, then the mushrooms are popping. Where I'm from in the Great Plains, they would say when the dandelions, when the dandelions begin to get their yellow, that's when the mushrooms are popping. I've heard around like in the South, there's people said that when the dogwood leaves begin to get the size of a squirrel's ear, then the morels are up. So just like ask any old timey mushroom hunter in your area. They're going to know whatever that little nature's cue is. And that's when you know it's time to go.
Got it. Well, that's a perfect morel minute. Thank you so much for that. I see that there's a poem in there somewhere that you could write, like how to know when the morels are popping. There's some sort of poetic mnemonic device or something that you could do with it.
There's actually a lot of nice like mushroom poems. My favorite one is like, there are old mushroom hunters, there are bold mushroom hunters, but there are no old, bold mushroom hunters, which basically means like don't eat something if you're not confident in its identification. Another one is referring to how do you know when you find a false morel? And it's like, if it's hollow, don't swallow, because a false morel will have some like the stem joined to the cap, whereas a true morel will be completely hollow. So there's already like plenty of nice poetry in mushroom hunting lore.
Good. Well, thank you for that. We may have you write that for the meateater.com, all the, like a weekly mushroom poem. I mean, this is it's pure traffic. All we want is people to click, and this is the ultimate clickbait. And our demographic skews so young that we should probably start to get the older demographic in there too. So thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Well, like that. Speaking of stuff you do for the meateater.com, there's a segue for you. I got an email, maybe the most interesting email I've ever received. That's saying a lot. This came from Andrew Wolf. He's up in beautiful Canada. He said, "Hey, Ben and Phil, big fan of the show and had an interesting story for you. I'm a fish and wildlife officer up in beautiful Canada, and the other day I went up to one of the more secluded trailheads in an area that is known for getting illegal dumpers." I'm assuming illegal dumpers means dumping of trash, but hopefully not like bodies or anything like that. We'll just assume trash. As I was driving up, I was of course listening to the good old quarantine cast, and sure enough, came across a dumper. I hopped. But we're big in the dumping community, apparently. I hopped out of my rig and detained the guy and brought him back to my truck. As I was checking the guy's license, he recognized the podcast in the background. "Hey, is that the Hunting Collective?" he asked. "It is," I responded. "I love that show, man. I listen to it all the time. I love that new guy they have on now. Phil's his name?" he said. I found it pretty funny that this guy got caught doing something illegal and was a fan of your show. Looks like Phil has a big fan out there. Keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully I can find more suspects who are fans. Andrew Wolf. Thanks, Andrew. Phil, any official comments? We're going to need to do some PR here. We're going to really need to
put out an official statement.
We're going to put out an official statement.
Okay, well, I don't appreciate that I'm being singled out here as the person attracting these miscreants. I don't know what's the word I should use.
Well, I picture that this guy had done everything legally and enjoyed our show.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, I really got to get rid of this stuff.
Then he heard
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, he heard my Star Wars segment and decided he had to drive off into the woods and dump a bunch of trash.
I just lost it.
Okay, well, I'd like to apologize to the THC community out there. Thanks for listening to the show, both the warden and the dumper.
Yeah, no, this is good. It's a good rhythmic. It helps you kind of get motivated for dumping and then do the dumping. Just kidding. Don't be dumping out there, you
Don't do it.
You idiots. Especially if you're listening to this show. You're not welcome. Spencer, you've been doing a lot of what we call Ask the Warden for over at themeateater.com. If you guys want to check that out, that's something we do quite often. So you've been talking to a lot of wardens out there. Have you heard what's the craziest story or the question you thought was answered in the most interesting way?
So we've interviewed probably like 20 different wardens and asked them all like 20 different questions. And almost every single time, my favorite answer comes from a California officer. They just like deal with a different kind of person than most wardens. There's just like way more, it seems like, casual fishermen or casual outdoorsmen that the California wardens deal with than, say, somebody in Indiana or Kansas or whatever. But one of my favorite questions that California warden has answered, Patrick Foy, he was talking about the craziest thing that he's ever done to catch a poacher. And in this instance, there was a famous lake that had like a very famous crappie bite, and everybody in the area knew that it was on. And so there were just all kinds of boats coming in and out, people going home with huge limits of crappie. And there was one boat there that was kind of a notorious poacher, always going over his limit. And the boat had been on the water all day and then all night even. And the game warden was waiting for him at the ramp. But he wanted this to be like kind of a sting. He wanted to surprise these guys. So what he did was he hid in a porta potty at the boat ramp, and he was in there for like 5 hours or something, waiting for these fishermen to finally pull up. And then when they got there, they pulled the boat out, and he approached them, and they said, nope, we only have like 65 crappies. They're all in our live well there. But the warden happened to know better. And so he started going through compartments in the boat, and sure enough, he was like removing life jackets and reached down and felt a prick, like the very notorious crappie dorsal fin prick that you sometimes get. And it was just a sopping wet bag. And inside there was 404 crappies. So these guys went like 330 over their limit or something. Wow. And the whole story, like that quantity of fish and the hiding in a porta potty in 3 a.m. It's been one of my favorite stories from the Ask the Warden series.
Yeah, well, you should check it out just for that reason. That's why, hunting guides and game wardens, I feel like, have some of the most interesting stories. Is there any way, Anthony, you can briefly tell that you're run-in with some unsavory characters down in Mexico on that hunt? I don't know why that strikes me as a story I want to hear right now, but...
Yeah, I'll try to make it a quick version, but I was on a hunt in Sonora, Mexico, a Coues deer hunt. This was a few years ago on the border region, and this was an area south of Arizona on a large ranch that went right up to the border. And the crew we were hunting with and the outfitters, they, said, there's some cartel activity here, and there's some folks who'll cross the border. You'll definitely see some folks on the ranch, but, they're kind of doing their thing. We're doing ours. So it's nothing to worry about. So, and it wasn't, pretty much. But very quickly we saw it was a little bit unusual than what they had been expecting. It was right after the 2016 election, after Trump was elected, but before he was inaugurated. So there seemed to be a big push for people to cross the border because they expected some changing policies. So when I tell you in a week there, we saw hundreds of people who were in the process of crossing the border. Now, this is a very remote ranch, cattle ranch off the grid, nothing around for miles. Terrific hunting, but you'd be in these, be hunting and you'd see some bucks and put on a stalk and come up to a water hole, and there's a bunch of guys sitting there, right? Waiting to cross. So it was very interesting. And, we knew we had been told, well, you may see some Army folks and they may come out and ask for your gun permits and things like that. So at one point, I was in one truck, and we were on one of these ranch roads, and we ran into some of our buddies who were in another truck. So we stopped just to say, hey, what are you seeing? Where are you going? We were kind of switching in the middle of the day. And so we stop, and we're sitting out there on the road talking, and all of a sudden we turned and looked, and here comes this guy in fatigues trotting towards us. And we said, oh, it must be, must be a guy from the army. And as soon as he got closer, we realized, well, he's not from the army. He didn't have, he had military weaponry, but he had some fatigues, but he was not wearing regular uniform, kind of mismatched.
Was he rolling with like an AK-47 or an
I
AR-15
can't
or what?
remember what he had. Everybody had assault rifles, or I shouldn't say assault rifles, like full military rifles that could switch to full auto of different types. So he's, all in Spanish. Hey, what are you guys doing? We're like, oh, we're hunting. The first thing we did is we had a bunch of, in the back of the trucks, we had coolers with lunch. And we also had some cold beers in there for after the hunt when we were done hunting for the day. So first thing we did was, hey, cerveza, and gave him a couple of cold beers.
Smart.
And he's talking to us and drinking a beer. And then he says, hey, can I have some beers for my boss? All in Spanish. And he points up, and we look up at this butte, and you can see there's just an encampment of men up there, a whole bunch of people. So we're like, oh, okay. And all of a sudden, 3 more guys come trotting down the road. He goes, oh, my boss. So then the boss comes up, and he was talking to us, and he was asking us questions like, oh, we gave more beer, obviously, right off the bat.
Yeah.
We said, oh, we're hunting here. And they said, oh, you seen any deer? They said, well, what are these your rigs? These are the trucks you're driving. Yeah, okay. Any other vehicles? They just kind of wanted to know what we were doing. And we were like, okay, you guys are here. We know you're doing your thing. We're doing our thing. We're just hunting and no problems. All right. And they actually asked if we got a deer to leave a venison quarter for them hanging by the road, which we did not do. We gave them enough beer, we thought. I'd say it was a tense moment. We didn't exactly feel threatened, but these are people who are, they were with the cartel and they're moving drugs and people and bad people, so that was just in the back of your mind. And the only time when it got really tense is one of the guys who was with us is a photographer. He put his camera up to his face, and immediately they were like, no photos. Made very clear we should not take any pictures. So
yeah, I hear that from Steve and Yanni and everybody all the time. When I go down there, I'm always you have that heightened sense.
Yeah,
but I've come to feel safer going down there. But I still just stories like this that still kind of send a little chill up your spine.
Yeah, and the outfitter, he said at the beginning of the season, he kind of sends one of his guys up to talk to one of their guys, just to say, we're going to be here for the next, month and a half. We're not in your way, etc. And you just think logically, well, they don't want any trouble with us, right? They're not gonna. They're doing their thing, but still, it added a little bit more of excitement to an already exciting hunt.
You should have said, "I'm a businessman. I do business."
Well, that's what we said. You're working hard. We're working, so we're just
I'm
gonna
down
do
here
our
on
thing.
business. I'm just here to do nothing. No big deal. All right. Oh man. All right. That's the crime beat. That's the THC crime beat. Phil, I'm gonna need some Cows Week in Review-esque sound effects for that. So thanks for that. I don't know why I wanted to hear that story, Anthony, but I'm just addicted to hunting stories now that I'm stuck in quarantine.
Yeah.
I just want to hear every story that I possibly can. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. One last thing before we get to my good buddies Guy and Ike Eastman and virtually travel up to the Northwest Territories in search of Dall sheep. We're gonna do something. I'm not gonna name this segment because it is something that I want to take rather seriously. We're gonna have for as long as quarantine goes on, we're gonna have someone on or read an email from someone just giving their perspective of what's happening in their quarantine life or what's happening since the quarantine has started. A couple of folks we're hoping to have on the show and just chat with them. We got a healthcare worker up in New York and another healthcare worker over in California that we've been talking to about coming on and just telling you their story about how this quarantine has kind of shaped and changed their life, and then exactly what has been going on since they've been in here. But I got a pretty cool email entitled COVID-19 and Some College Kid from Will. I want to say his last name is Taege. How would you say that, Phil? Taege. Give it to me, Phil. Pronounce that. Tage?
Tage. Tage. Sure.
That's fine. We'll just go with good Tage.
Taille.
Taille. All right.
Like the yogurt.
He is a big fan of Tiger King, apparently, and enjoyed our episode. So hopefully everybody's watching Tiger King. But he says, I figured I would send you my perspective and story of how quarantine has affected me. As a broke college kid, essential worker, and the effects of being in Florida for when spring break quarantine began. He's a student at UW Stevens Point in Wisconsin. I work at a shipping company as a package handler and yard switcher, which is now considered an essential job. While in Florida, visiting my grandparents and doing more fishing that most would consider sane, COVID-19 became a serious thing, thus cutting our trip short and forcing us to come home real quick. When I finally got home to Stevens Point, in Wisconsin, I was surprised to hear that my employer wanted me to come back to work. My first night back at work left me feeling very uneasy. I just traveled cross-country through many states with numerous cases, and for some reason, I am working, handling thousands of packages per night. I asked my manager why I was able to come back to work, and he had a good answer, but not one I was okay with. He said that I do not have any symptoms. They cannot force me to quarantine. With everything going on, I decided that if my employer cannot force me to quarantine, I will self-quarantine instead. I quit my job and moved out of my apartment in order to be distant from my roommate, who also works an essential job. I moved back home the next morning and now had a lot of free time with no school due to extended spring break and unfortunately no work. Since I began my quarantine, I've been very socially distant. I have done many projects around the house, such as clean the garage, clean my room at my parents' house, clean the basement, organize our several freezers, make burger, frame in a room, clean my waterfowl hunting trailer, get my spring fishing things in order, and clean out my boat, and most importantly, driving around in my vehicle listening to Benny O.B. and Phil the Engineer while scouting for turkeys. Now, thankfully, Wisconsin has not shut down fishing or turkey hunting, and I have not heard about any plans to do so. In this time, I have gained permission on about 10 farms with numerous birds and found more turkeys on public land that I didn't even know existed. It is much more difficult to attain permission when I don't feel comfortable knocking on doors during these times, so finding phone numbers and communicating has been a challenge. Anyway, I'll cut it off here. I thought I should write in and give perspective of a college kid who's broke and trying to make it work. Thank you, Will. There's a lot of stuff in there, but what's interesting to me, Tony, is that he quit his job and moved out of his apartment to keep himself quarantined.
That's a bold move.
That's a bold move. Is that a move you would have made in that situation?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So yeah, Will, I don't know, Will. I want you to stay employed and I want you to stay healthy, but we're not sure about that. Spencer, what's your reaction to that perspective?
I was just telling my wife this the other day that thank goodness we are not this awkward college age where we'd have to be quarantined with our parents potentially for a month or months. And so I'm just really thankful that, we're in a situation where we can work remotely and we don't have to make any tough decisions like that. But I'm also glad that I'm not holed up with my parents for weeks at a time in my early 20s.
Boy, Spencer, I hope your parents aren't listening to this podcast.
They're not.
Yeah. It's a trust tree. You're in the nest.
Right.
It's fine. Just let it out.
They probably wouldn't want me there anymore than I would want them there for months at a time either.
Well, there's some level of responsibility in that, Will. So we appreciate you making sure not to spread the virus, and hopefully you kill some turkeys. Hopefully all that scouting pays off and you kill some turkeys. We're definitely going to be publishing a story on themeateater.com about our 14-day quarantine guide. It seems like Will is kind of already doing a lot of things we might suggest, finding every damn thing he possibly can to pass the time. So yeah, if you check our social media, we're going to be doing a bunch of pass the time Q&As with everybody from their homes. And then if you check the website, meateater.com, you're going to see our 14-day quarantine guide at some point here in the next day or two. So we're all trying to figure out what to do. What do you got coming up, Tony? What are the things that you're trying to do with the kids or just to keep your mind off the old quarantine?
Well, one thing I'm doing is just trying to fish with them. We can fish here. access points aren't closed, rivers aren't closed. We're trying to fish real close to home without traveling really far. So we did a lot of that this weekend. That was really fun. And, one thing I am going to talk about on the meateater.com and the social channels is we started a backyard bird list, which is lots of fun. See, Spencer, you're not the only one with old man hobbies.
Well,
I'll
listen,
just say.
if there's any media brand that like embraces that kind of nerdiness, it's us.
Yeah.
Like, so we're all like, that's awesome. Way to go find some rocks, bro. You know,
Yeah. Right. And I do have a rock tumbler, so you're not the only one who likes rocks, but we'll save that for later. But with here in the house at the quarantine, so I got out the binoculars, a bird book, and with my daughter, we started a notebook, put the date down, say, we started actually on April 1st, and we just real simple count how many different species we see every day in the backyard and from the house. And it's really fun. It's something easy to do, brings nature inside a little bit. My daughter's really into it, surprisingly. We then look up the birds in the book, and she looks at the pictures, and she's learning some, and it's a little bit of almost like a scavenger hunt. So that's one
awesome.
thing we're doing.
That's great. Yeah, I've been doing that with my kid too. We've got I've mentioned it on the show a couple of times. We've got a little pamphlet. I guess I call it a pamphlet, but it's a laminated like fold out thing. And I got one for trees and birds and animal tracks and scat. We went out to one of the fishing sites and it's right by our house. And it's got a nice little campsite right by the river. So we go down there and made a fire and cooked some deer brats and got our little pamphlet out and saw red-tailed hawk, Steller's Jay, American crow. Nothing real exciting for most of us, but for a little kid, man, to be able to like see it and then look and identify it and like make that connection that he's learning about the outside world is substantial. So, and it's fun and normal and just feels like I'd be doing that no matter what. So those little things are important for us all. So like I said, we're going to try each week to no sound effects, no name the segment. We're just going to try to have somebody on and just kind of share their story, what they're going through, whether it's positive or negative, and just kind of get some real stories from listeners out there. So you guys all know that we're going through this together, and we're going to tell hunting stories and have a fun time anyway. So thank you, boys. We're going to take you now to Ike and Guy Eastman from Wyoming. We're going to be talking about Dall sheep all the way up in the Great North. Enjoy.
After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.
Guy and Ike Eastman, how are you?
Good. It's 2020 or COVID-19. We're trying to keep 6 feet apart from each other. Doing good though. Other than that,
You guys look like you're about 6 feet apart. Although,
yeah.
although
feet.
like you were saying, Wyoming basically keeps 6 feet apart at all times anyhow. So
Yeah, you if you walk up to somebody and you're closer than 6 feet, people start walking backwards, stepping back, and yeah, there's only 500,000 people in this state anyway. I was calculating the other day. I said, "You realize we have like 120 acres per person in Wyoming?"
how many acres per cow?
4.
That's about. Well, before we get into the fun conversation, I should just you guys both have kiddos, and even though you're not locked in quarantine kind of as much as we are up here, how are you guys handling this whole thing?
It hasn't changed my life all that much. Obviously, going to the grocery store is a little awkward. I haven't had to wait in line at the coffee hut for a while, which is kind of handy. But my poor wife is about to pull her hair out. She's been quarantined just because our kids aren't in school, and so she's trying to do her job and do the homeschooling thing, which has been, with the technology. It's awesome we have this kind of technology,
Right.
but when it doesn't work, it's a complete mess.
Yeah. Yeah, you can ask me about that the last 3 weeks. I've spent probably about 15 hours podcasting and 20 hours figuring our program out. So it's the beauty.
You're learning all kinds of stuff.
We're living in the future is what I find. Guy, what's going on over at your house?
Oh, my wife is having a good time. She says she'll never complain about her job ever again. I call her the silver fox now. I never knew her hair grew that fast because she can't get it colored. I had to go put my hat on because I can't even get a haircut. So my wife and daughter just shaved my head the other night. They're not really that good of barbers, but
yeah,
I mean it's getting really crazy in the Eastman household. I don't know what I'm going to come out of this with.
Yeah, I was thinking of getting, just for the show, just for this podcast, like a wheel to spin of at-home haircuts, and just so I could, for every guest that comes on, we spin the wheel, and then you got to get the haircut. That's
going to be, and that would be the thumbnail for the podcast.
Yep, the wheel.
Exactly. Well, that Flowbee sold out. That little vacuum that you cut your own hair from when we were younger. Yeah, you can't even get one of those anymore.
Well, but just social media is good for a lot of things. It's good if you do shave your head, Guy. Just be sure to film it, put it out there for the people.
Yeah, for the folks.
We're gonna need it. We're gonna need it. Well, we're here for a lot of reasons, but I think number one, I asked for permission from our friends at Yeti to talk about this film that they are working on currently, and then the hunt that we went on. How many? Has it been 3 years yet? 2.5 years at least, right?
Yeah, I think it was the summer of 2017.
17?
Right.
Yeah,
because it was 50 years from when they built that cabin up in Godwin Lakes.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
So, well, I guess we could first talk about, the business that you guys have right now, and then we can maybe work our way back to that hunt and to what it means to your family. Because I think that what you guys do now, in the, just to briefly go off into an industry conversation, is unique because you're a family-run business and you've been doing it for decades in a time when every media business is in a conglomerate. It's all big money from somewhere or from one of the coasts, one way or the other. And it's hard to keep a family-run business as you have. And I admire that, number one, but this story that we're about to tell kind of highlights that. How do you guys feel about where Eastman's is right now?
I think we're in an awesome place. As technology changes the way we consume media, it's been really fun to watch our company transform from, I guess the term is traditional media, magazines and television, to more of a digital world. We just launched 2 weeks ago. Great time to launch this, actually. It's what we call Tag Hub. And in our magazine, the back of both the Eastman's Bow Hunting and Eastman's Hunting Journal, there's a members research section, and it's all about how to, all the tag allotments and application deadlines, percentage of draw. There's, 500,000 data points for just this, the Western states. And so we did an online version of that called Tag Hub. And it's been really fun to watch, what we took from a magazine print side and converted it to digital and made it really, for lack of better terms, 3D and sortable and searchable. And it's going to create where you can look for tags out West, license opportunities 10 times faster than you'd have to do your research in an actual printed form. So I'm excited. That's just one example of a lot of stuff that has went from the print side to the digital side, or from TV to YouTube to podcasts. I mean, it's an exciting time to be in media, in my opinion.
Yeah. What are the hardest things you guys have to go through is like keeping up and just the daily grind of a media business and hunting?
Probably the conversion, converting not only our staff and team members, but also, our audience to consuming content that way. The advertisers and the people that pay the bills, they haven't, they've been looking for it, but the consumers are, that we're all, middle-aged men, and we don't like change. Just the same way. We want it the exact same way, delivered the same way, everything the same way. What do you mean I can't get it the same way? Well, the time has changed. Paper's different. The post office is different. I would say that's my biggest concern or my biggest frustration.
What have you seen, Guy?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much have evolved into. Luckily, we're a small company, like you said, a small family-owned business, so we were able to change quicker than most. With the digital changes in the world. I mean, those big media conglomerates, you know who they are. They've really struggled to make that conversion. They've kind of been behind the eight ball, where we actually were able, I think, to get a little bit in front of it. So we've actually kind of run two businesses under one roof here. We do their traditional side, like Ike said, and then our digital side, which there is crossover between the two, but the way you package a piece of content to deliver it digitally versus the way you deliver it in a magazine, it can be the same content, but you have to wrap it a little different way to get it, to penetrate both those audiences, even if they're the same person, And so it's really been an interesting ride. And how technology is, it moves so fast. I mean, what we were doing a year ago isn't working the same as it did a year ago, but we have new things that we're doing that are working. I mean, the social media changes that yearly. What works on Facebook 5 years ago is obsolete now.
Damn right. Yeah, they just want your money now.
Yeah, and they're getting more creative at getting it.
Yeah, that's right. They give you that carrot, like, hey, look how cool this could be, and then we're going to slowly take it away from you, and you're going to pay to get it back. That's actually, it's a slick business model. So I like Zuckerberg for that. Have you guys, how would you describe Eastman's, what it is? Its core hasn't really changed much. Like you guys are saying, it kind of delivers. I love it. I mean, like I've read the magazine since I was a kid and love getting to know you guys. Like, how would you just describe it briefly in its beginning? I think it was 1987 it began. Is that right?
Yep.
Go ahead. I know that because it was just in the film, so that's my reference. But from 1987 to today.
Oh, that's right. It is in there.
Yeah. Well, like how would you describe it?
I think that our demographic, if you want to talk about our audience that way, is kind of the hardcores in the big game Western hunting market. They're the guys that are not only generational but real serious about it, spend a lot of money, hunt a lot of different states, hunt globally in some respects. And so they're kind of like, you take the hunting market and take the meat right out of the center of the cut there, the really hardcore guys. And that's kind of what we appeal to. Of course, we try to bring in new people like everybody does, and we are doing a better job at attracting those kind of people as well. But it gets to be a trick because you got to, you have to speak to that hardcore audience without lowering the message down to also attract the new people coming in. And so that's always been a challenge for us, and continues to be. And I don't see that going away. But our guys are really hardcore, real serious Western, big game hunters.
We've found from doing this generational, and I watched my grandfather do this, and I watched my father do it, and actually Guy and I are in a stage of this. We found that it's hunting out west is a transition, and you start. There's two ways you start. Either you're braying into it through a family member or somebody that helped you when you were young and started hunting, or you got into it later in life, and those two paths start very differently, but they end in the same spot. The guys that started in their 20s and 30s hunting, they go, well, this would be fun, and they set the goal. I just want to harvest something this year, and then the next year or 4 years down the road, they're like, I'm pretty good at that. there's not a question that I'm going to have a problem filling my freezer. I'm going to take it to the next step. And what's the next step? Well, I'm going to shoot a mature animal, and then it's a mature buck. And then pretty soon, these guys are trying to shoot a trophy buck. And if they can't shoot a trophy buck, they just revert back, fill the freezer. Or a mature 6-point bull elk. And if they can't do that, they're passing up on 5 points and stuff, and they just revert back and they fill the freezer. And then the next step after that is kind of where my dad is. And I saw, guy more so than me because I was a lot younger, but where my dad is right now, he likes to hunt, but he doesn't want to be the hunter. He wants to be along. He wants to hang out, the camaraderie, he's not, he goes, how many, 6-point bull elk do I have to kill? I'm good. You guys do that. I'll be along. I'll be in the camp and enjoy that and share the meat with me, and I'm good. So it's kind of fun. We're taking those center guys and we're trying to take the I don't want to say the beginners, but kind of the beginners and bring them up into that center. And then we're also, we have a large demographic of the 60 to 80 year olds that they're using it as, gosh, I remember back in 1982 when we took those 4 head of horses in the head of Pacific Creek, and they use it as something to remind them of the good old days in their world. So that's been fun. It's really been fun to watch.
That's an incredibly well stated, walkthrough of how this goes. And when I moved here to Montana, that was exactly my goal, is to give my kids a chance as an East Coast kid who didn't see an elk till I was 23. Give them a chance to kind of start in the beginning, start from scratch, and when they get old enough to want to go do it on their own, to have it right out their back door.
Yep.
And you guys grew up with that, and I always wanted to give my kids that. So it's even in these times, in these quarantine times, you guys, it reflects in like how you guys talk about what's going on in your day-to-day lives. Not much has changed.
Yeah. And yesterday when I went to pull the meat out of the freezer for the Sunday afternoon family dinner with my wife, my family and my wife's parents, I opened up the freezer and it's still full. And I was thinking to myself, I'll bet I have 9 months worth of food in here. And it's been planned. We've been doing it for years. I know how much it's going to take.
That's what my wife said. Well, at least we won't run out of meat. I said, yeah, we don't have any toilet paper to wash it down with, but
you just got to cook that meat in a certain way to keep yourself regular.
I think your body will adapt.
That's true. Now, it's the same thing. We've been talking about that here for 3 weeks, like how it's like some weird comfort to open up. Sometimes I'll just go open up the freezer and look in there and then shut it and walk back in the house. It's just and then go to sleep like a little baby.
Yep. We're not going to starve.
We'll be okay.
Well, there's all those memes floating around about, hunters and we've been born and bred for this basically. And some of that is true. I mean, like you said, you got a full freezer. I mean, we need some vegetables and some bread here and there, but we know we're not going to starve to death.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, I'm sure, are in different boats in this country, but we're all good.
I told somebody, I said, I don't make my own clothes necessarily. I probably couldn't build my own house if you gave me the lumber, but I have no worries on the meat side.
Yeah. Now I can't cook. I see your Instagram. You've got must have a million good recipes. Your stuff always looks more appetizing than mine turns out, Ben.
Well, I work for a company.
Or is
called
that all
Meat
staged?
Eater. It's all staged.
Like I saw that photo in the Pioneer Woman.
Yeah. No, I work for a company called Meat Eater, so I really have no damn choice in the matter. I'd like to just cook a sloppy Joe, but it's not. They won't let me.
That wouldn't fly.
No, probably not. No, actually, we've done some good sloppy Joe recipes. Can't lie about that. Yeah, I mean, what's the culture? I mean, we'll talk about your grandfather. And I just pulled up a thing, and funny enough, they asked us for our website not long ago, like, who's your hunting hero? And I didn't want to be too trite about it. And so I just wrote a little thing about your grandfather. I was like, if you want a hunting hero, here's one. And that's true. I really do think that Gordon Eastman was one of hunting's true pioneers and true heroes. But like, what's the, as we get to telling his story a little bit, what's the family culture like there for you guys? You grew up in hunting, grew up in the outdoors. Like, just describe, how that culture is between you guys.
My dad says it beautifully. So, we grew up doing this stuff. We'd spend all summer on a lake in British Columbia, or, as a family, or we'd be, sleeping in sleeping bags all summer and into the, early or late spring and early fall. And he goes, it took him till he's in the mid-20s before he realized not everybody did that. And so, our culture was, my grandfather was an adventurer, a true pioneer adventurer, and he's passed that down along the generations. It's so important to us that, I'm doing that with my kids, 4 generations later, and it's an adventure, and it's all about the adventure, and it's all about, it's not the taking of the animal is kind of the culmination of it, but it's really about being there and being outside and understanding everything about, my dad used to do this to us kids. He used to drive me nuts. Now I see why he did it. We'd be driving down the highway, and he would go into wherever, driving through Yellowstone, going to Grandma Grandpa's, they lived on the other side of Yellowstone from us. And he'd just start picking our brain. What river is that? Where does it flow? What ocean does it end up in? When do porcupines rut? Just random stuff. And so it used to drive us nuts, but come to find out, he was teaching us how to be outdoorsmen, not just hunters, how to be people that understood how nature works and why things happen when they do. And that's kind of been our culture, our whole life. And it's been fun. It's been fun to now that I'm an adult and I have kids, teaching my kids the same thing.
Yeah. Did it take you a while to start, like when you had kids? This is my experience. My dad was always like that. He knew every bird, every tree, every animal. He was an encyclopedia. And it took me till I had kids to realize how valuable that was. I was an outdoorsman, but I didn't pick that up from him. He never really forced it on me. But when I had kids, I'm like, yeah, my kid's gonna know every bird, every tree, everything. All those things you just said. So when did it kick in for you guys?
I think when you become a parent, you learn it's not just that, it's everything. You learn how selfish you were before children, and you learn how in order to raise good people, you have to do certain things. And I think naturally you end up doing the same things that your parents did for you or to you. I find myself disciplining my children the same way my parents do. And it just rolls right back into them teaching us what they taught us, me teaching my kids that. And I think it was just natural. It's not like one day I woke up and went, oh crap, I forgot to teach them that was a robin that was laying eggs and that they're blue. It was just, oh, that's a robin, that's blue. Oh yeah, I guess I am teaching my kids stuff. That it just becomes natural. Wouldn't you agree, Guy?
Yeah, I think a lot of kids, most kids, at least our kids for sure, have a natural gravitation to that connection, with nature. And it's fascinating to them. And I had kids later in life, of course, and so I took a lot of that for granted. And you really realize, whoa, I guess, you take a lot of that for granted. And then when you have a kid, it's like you learn it all over again, showing them, and they get so excited about things that you just really didn't pay much attention to. I mean, I'm sure you're there with boys, Ben. I have a girl, but, I went on a goose hunt with her. I hate goose hunting. I haven't done it since I was a kid. I have no interest in it. And the guys in the office convinced me to go because my daughter wanted to go. We had a great time, but it was really interesting to watch her and, a couple of guys from the office have girls her same age. So it was like dads and 3 little girls that are 5 years old in a goose blind. Oh my gosh. I can't believe we got anything, but, I was kind of upset with myself that I thought it was going to be such a sucky experience just because I don't really like bird hunting that much, but it was such a big deal to her, and seeing her light up and everything's new, it was really interesting. And I think, getting them involved at that age, she's not afraid of blood now. She's not afraid of death. She's way ahead of her years and her peers from being exposed to that at the right age. And I think that it makes a big difference, especially in today's age.
Huge. Yeah, I just spent the whole weekend turkey scouting, in air quotes with my kid, because for me, like personally, I'd be bombing in somewhere and I'd spend the night and I'd find turkeys, and it would be a very efficient process, I feel. Generally, it was just me doing it or me and a buddy. But with a little, my kids, getting to be 4 years old, and it's just a slower process. If I'm being honest, a lot of times he just picks up sticks and hits trees with them.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to dial yourself back, to that, because you're used to, it's all about the outcome. And I think it's been good for me as a hunter and outdoorsman to dial that stuff back, because it's easy to get in that rut where you just, all of a sudden, you're only as good as your next outcome, and you're just measuring everything by the outcome, and the kids coming into it bring you way back to where, hey, hunting cow elk, that's pretty neat. Fills a freezer, and we don't have to hunt the big bulls all the time. And I know a lot of guys in my age group and peer group that I think it's a good learning lesson to roll that back a little ways and really see it through the kids' eyes and come back up to speed or raise with that tide as they get older. And it's a good lesson. Otherwise, I think you get off the deep end on this stuff and get too serious about it, really.
Oh, yeah. I'm in that situation. I got 4 Montana tags, and I'm like, well, I got to get this one filled because I got 3 more to go, and I only got a month to do it. I don't have time to be hitting, like throwing rocks in the river. And and I turn around, and my son's just chucking rocks. I'm like, well, I'll go throw some rocks too. Screw it.
Yep.
And it's like exactly what you're saying, Guy. Like that it is. I'm sure it comes at a time in our lives where we are more results driven when you get into later in your years, and then you need to be dialed back a little bit.
You have 4 Montana turkey tags?
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't know you could get 4 in Montana.
I think you can get 6 total. I think I'm going to say 6 total. Yeah, you can get I think 5 total, essentially over the counter. And then there's 1 or 2 draw tags too. But as it is most places out west, you'd have to drive about 30 hours to make those 7 turkey tags happen. So
not going to do that in a weekend?
Nah, probably not. It's a little less efficient than other places. But yeah, I mean, I'm so results driven in that regard, and it's also part of the as much meat as possible. But it's great to hear you guys thinking that too, because it's a beautiful balance when you can get your kids out there. And I know your guys, like Mike Eastman, your father, is an interesting character for a lot of reasons. Like, how did he, how was he a part of your life at that time?
Because I'm going to date myself here. I was 10 years old when this thing started. And so, after about 10, he spent a lot of time working, a lot of time on the road. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have credit cards. They didn't have cell phones. So he spent a lot of time at shows and a lot of time lecturing in front of big audiences. And so he wasn't there until I got back into high school much. He was there in the summers is about it, because we all know hunting season slows down in the summer. And then in high school, when I was able to start hunting in Wyoming back then, it was 14. It came all back, and I spent a lot of time with him in the desert hunting antelope, because that's where we lived, and it was a lot, hunting and filming antelope back then. It was a lot of fun. I learned a ton. Not saying that a 15-year-old kid would be pleasant to be bouncing around out in the desert every day when there was other things on my mind, but it was, he did it, and I'm a better person for it, and he's got a few gray hairs because of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, Guy, and you're the older brother. How was it for you, kind of doing that before Ike got a chance to?
Yeah, I'm a fair amount older, so a lot of that happened when I was in college. So I wasn't here when he was, building the beginnings of the business as much as Ike was. Ike actually grew up more in the business than I did, because then when I came back, was done with college, a lot of the groundwork had already been laid. But because I was older, I spent a lot more time with my grandfather, actually, in the summers, helping film and that kind of thing, while my dad was building this business. So I got a pretty good glimpse of immersion in both worlds, my grandfather and my dad, and it's kind of interesting to see the difference. One thing I notice is how you pass it on to one generation. It kind of then gets a little bit of its own flavor put onto it and its own seasoning, then goes to the next generation. So you can kind of sometimes the grandson grandfather interaction is a little different, in the hunting world than the dad and the son, even because the generations are just different. My grandfather was the World War II generation, pretty hardcore, everything real hardcore. My dad was in between me and my grandfather, of course. So his was a little bit different outlook and more on the outdoorsman side of things and all the natural world and that kind of thing. He's into still photography, not so much the filming, and so it was a little bit different between the two.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Similar in my life. My grandfather he was a hard ass, man. And then my dad was a little less so, and then I'm probably giving my kid more hugs at 3 years old than I got from my grandfather. That's all right.
They were just tough, weren't they? That generation was just tough.
It was just, it was work, man. It was, like there wasn't an off switch in a lot of ways that I found with my grandfather. There wasn't like, hey guys, let's take a break this weekend. Let's just go to the pool. There wasn't it.
I think their world was really black and white, and it was yes or no or hit or miss. There wasn't a lot of in between. Those guys.
Neither of my grandfathers who grew up in that generation would stop working. Either of them into their to the later years, the last couple of years of their life, were both still going to work. And I just I can't imagine that. I want to retire someday. I'd like to take a break.
They came from a generation where they didn't have a backup plan. Their backup plan was, I got to save as much money as I can right now because I was a kid during they were a kid during the Depression, and there was nothing.
Yeah. I think that probably shaped them, and they saw real hardship, so they didn't want to return to that. So there was no
$2 trillion,
Yeah.
package.
I felt like my grandfather always looked at me like, and he would say things that kind of alluded to this, but basically look at me like, kid, I've seen a big deal and this ain't it. Get back up on that horse. We're only halfway there. What I said, it's going to rain, Grandpa. So what? What are you made of sugar? You're going to melt? Keep going. Okay. It just.
I'm going to say
those
that
guys
one.
were tough.
I would say, that needs to be an Eastman's T-shirt there. I've seen a big deal and this ain't it.
He had all these military sayings that just really put you in your place. You just be like, oh, okay, fine. We'll march off the cliff. I don't care.
Well, we should, there's a film. It's a very mysterious film in a lot of ways. It's been a couple of years since we were up, and like I said, 2.5 years now, or 3 years almost since we've been up in the Northwest Territories, in the Mackenzie Mountains, and trying to trace the steps of your grandfather. And the film is in its later stages of development, and at some point, our friends at Yeti will put it out on their film tour, maybe next year, or on their website, or all those things as they do normally with Yeti Films. So we'll leave the film kind of to the side for now because it'll be a while before it comes out. I will say I saw it. Felt Soul is the production company that we worked with while I was at Yeti, and Ben Knight and Travis Rummel are savants. It's an amazing film to tease everybody. You guys feel the same?
Oh my gosh, yeah. You couldn't have asked for a better story. Somebody that told the story that well, and depicted an adventure as well as they did, and I knew the story obviously, but to see it on camera and to see it in a film was awesome, unbelievable.
It's always a tough thing, when you have a family legacy and you're connected to it, so you don't know if it's going to be as interesting to a general audience as it was to you, and you kind of put that in someone else's hands, hoping they can do what you think your family's heritage is justice. And those guys knocked it out of the park. I mean, it was I know that I've talked to Ben a little bit, and he was nervous about that because it was such a I think it was a fairly moving film even for them to work on, just because there's so much history, and Gordon is pioneer or icon or whatever in the industry, and so I think they had a lot of weight on their shoulders. They felt they did, and I think they knocked it out of the park. Those guys did an awesome job, and I know they worked really hard on it, and it just turned out incredible.
I always felt, and I know we felt that going into this trip too, that there's some kind of gift in guys with the talent of Ben and Travis who aren't hunters, like we are, or like aren't entrenched in the industry and haven't kind of built a life around it. Taking their lens to this, quite literally, but trying to tackle just telling this story and weaving in hunting as not the primary motivation for making it, but just telling your family story. And I think your family story, it shows out as your family story generationally, is one of the more important modern stories to tell, for a bunch of reasons that we've kind of already discussed. But I like having been on the trip and knowing that country and knowing you guys. I shed a tear at the end of it. Damn, man, it's a very powerful tale for lots of reasons.
Yeah, it's amazing what they were able to accomplish and take the old footage and put it into the modern times and tell a 50-year-old a story that spans 50 years in the same exact setting at the same exact camp, and there's still remnants of him being there, and it was and oddly enough, the cool thing is that none of us really knew that that's what was going to happen. Even the outfitter didn't know that's what was going to happen. And we get plopped in the middle of nowhere, Northwest Territories, and it's the exact same spot. I mean, what's the chances of that?
Yeah. When I was watching that back, we should set this up. Basically, we wanted to make a film and at some level retrace the steps that your grandfather Gordon Eastman did when he was filming in the 1960s in the Northwest Territories, specifically in the Mackenzie Mountains. And we picked an outfitter that we knew was in the area. But what we didn't know is when we landed at that Canal Outfitters that's right in the Godland Lake camp, you land in the middle of nowhere, and there's an outbuilding, a skinning shed, a couple of other little cabins in the middle of nowhere, quite literally. And we land there, and there's a little sign hanging on this cabin that our cooking and hanging out cabin. And what did it say, Guy?
It said C.W. Long, 1962, was it?
1967, literally
67,
50 years.
Okay, yeah. And that was Cougar Long who built the cabin, and it's in my grandfather's film from 1967 of them building that cabin. I mean, we landed right there, and that was it was so meant to be, because you can't just get a sheep hunt up in the Northwest Territories at the last minute, right? And Glenda had just taken over that camp, and most of the bookings had left because it was a change in outfitter, and she happened to have an opening for us to come in there, and unbeknownst to us, it was that exact same camp, same cabin, same everything.
And if the sheep situation was even crazier, right? I mean, you look up, if I remember, like you look up like maybe west of camp or northwest of camp, and there's a big ridge, pretty particular ridge. And we're looking there, and you guys were commenting like, "You think that's where Grandpa killed his sheep over there?"
Well, there's a story that when they were building the cabin, they looked up on the top of this mountain, and there's a band of rams. And my grandfather's like, "I'm going to walk up there and shoot one of them." Of course, they're all going, "You're not going to walk up there and shoot one." Well, sure enough, he put his boots on and walked up there and shot one. Well, and we spent 4 days in the snow, up on a different ridge looking at sheep, and had an experience with some rams, but they weren't quite what we needed to harvest. And we ended up back at the camp, going to kind of replenish and go out again. And sure enough, there's a band of rams on the exact same mountain. And so what we do, we woke up the next morning, put our boots on, and walked up there, and which sounds really easy. It was not. In fact, there was a couple times that Ben and Travis were like, "I am not comfortable walking across this this again. I've about died 3 times." I remember one time that we're there was 4 or 5 of us, and we're walking up in, kind of scaling this cliff side, and you had to walk up the chute that had loose slate in it, and one guy walks underneath the slate, the other guy walks on top, and it just about took, I think it was Travis or Ben, it just about took them out, and they would have fell, not only get buried, but they would have fell a long ways. And so it wasn't an easy walk, but we walked up there and were able to find the band of rams, and guy was able to take a really, really good ram on the same exact mountain.
And then in the film, you guys are looking at a photo of the ram that Gordon killed literally 50 years. I'm not going to be so melodramatic, but 50 years to the day, 50 years to the year.
Yeah. 50 years to the summer.
To the summer. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. And here it is, like these rams could have been father and son, or in this case, probably great grandfather and son. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that was a crazy adventure.
Yeah, and you're, you have the sheep bug guy, like you're fully immersed in the sheep world, and here you are, in some of the beautiful. Your grandfather described it as this like beautiful, easy to look at pastel country, in the top of the world, basically looking with a dead doll ram looking out across this landscape. You did get pretty emotional, right, at the time for as much emotion as you're willing to give.
Yeah, it was a pretty emotional experience for sure. I mean, that the country's just emotional anyway, I think, don't you? I mean, he really was right. It's like something your eyes have never really looked at. It's very unique mountain range. I mean, even when compared to, I've hunted the Brooks Range in Alaska and the Alaska Range and a lot of different ranges up there, but that McKenzie's is just a different mountain range, and it's so remote that you really, it's an emotional place, at least to me, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, like, it's just so vast. You can see so much, and it's so open that you feel smaller than some of these other places. I mean, here in Montana, in the Gallatin Range, you can't see nearly as far because some of the peaks are so high. But there, you just feel like everything's kind of, once you're up high enough, on the same level. And it's such a just beautiful, gentle-looking terrain from far off. It's not jagged. It's just kind of smooth in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's not as rocky and rough as you think sheep country would be. It's pretty. I mean, it's not easy to negotiate, but for when it comes to sheep terrain, it's fairly easy to negotiate once you get on top of it.
Yeah. If it wasn't for a couple of boulder fields and a bunch of shale rock, it wouldn't be that bad.
No.
There's not.
It's
a
a
whole
really
lot of
special place. Anyone who's never been there, I mean, it's definitely on a place you should set your eyes on at some point in your life if you're an outdoors person.
It feels so surreal up there. You can't. It's impossible to describe it. And even, the film, as well as Travis and Ben did filming that, it still doesn't tell the full story. Once you see it in real life, it's amazing.
Yeah. I remember when I was hunting in a different area you guys were for caribou, and we landed in a helicopter. So we'll have to tell the story to our helicopter pilot at some point. Oli. Because a good hunt like this in the north isn't complete without a couple of characters running around. We had a guide that was a character and a pilot that was a character, among many things. But we landed there, and then you have the rule that you can't hunt for 12 hours? I think, if I remember correctly, something like that.
12 or 24.
I think it's 12 hours, but midnight has to be in those 12 hours because it doesn't get dark. Yeah,
that's right. So we land there. We're kind of sitting up on a ridge with my guide, and it's we look down in this little valley, and coming up this river is the meanest sow grizzly I've ever seen. Like, she was just walking up, rolling up this riverbed, and everything she saw, she squashed. Like, everything that moved got squashed. Every bush that moved got whacked. I thought, well, if any grizzly's gonna kill me, it's that one. It's just, something has just happened to piss her off. And just sitting there realizing how far away we were, how disconnected we were, and how dangerous a place like this can be if you don't know how to handle it. to me, like, denotes then when I watch this film of your grandfather in like Army surplus packs and all this stuff going there for 30 days, how that man survived.
Yeah, those guys were tough. And they, like you said, they had, wearing cowboy boots and Army surplus backpacks and Boy Scout tents and, eating whatever they could take up there. And they could shoot a sheep and that had to feed them for 3 or 4 days. And then they go shoot another sheep. I mean, just amazing. And we're sitting there complaining about our MREs and our Mountain House meals and canned tuna and living in sleeping bags where you don't get cold and tents that don't get you stay dry in. And yeah, it's
oh yeah. I remember after we left camp and we got hiking the first time, we were moving across the valley to find some caribou. I picked my pack up finally and got walking. I'm like, why is this thing so heavy? I think it weighs like 70 pounds. And I look in there and the camp folks had like put in about 30 pounds of tuna.
In cans, not in packages, cans.
Yeah, I'm like, holy crap. And like one Snickers bar. I'm like, well, all right. I'm a little offended, but that's fine. I'll take it.
If I remember right, I think weren't we horse trading Snickers? Don't you have an affliction for Snickers? I
do, yeah. I was probably willing to do just about anything for Snickers at some point. Yeah, I was like, you're not going to eat that Snickers, are you? No way.
I'll trade you a can of tuna. Wait, what?
I'll trade you a can. Yeah. Once you have that much tuna, it's like the flavors are really tradable. Like that Chipotle tuna. Yep. I'll trade you that for a blade of grass. But there was a curry flavor that I would rather use for a pillow than
the buffalo wild wing or the buffalo sauce one. I still eat that.
Yeah, that was the one. When I taste tuna now, I think about sitting on some ridge at midnight in full light looking for caribou.
I have not eaten a piece of tuna since.
We did have fun though. We'd sit around.
Oh man!
After the sheep was taken and we went back out caribou hunting, and of course I had a tag and you had a tag, and we sat in that camp for 2 days and just looking for caribou, because you think it's a lot different hunting mountain caribou than barren grounds because they don't migrate. So you're sitting in one spot just hoping to find one.
Yeah.
And then when you find one, hoping to put them to bed and go take them. And so we sat there for 2 days on that big ridge and told some of the dumbest stories, and heard Logan, who was the guy.
Logan Peasley. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, that guy had remember his grizzly bear stories?
Oh my god. Everybody was a cousin or an uncle. Yeah. Do you remember any of his stories that we can retell?
Yeah, do you remember the story? So they shoot this bull in this elk in southern British Columbia. They shoot this elk, and like 4 or 5 grizzly bears come in on him to take this elk, and they fight these bears off for 3 hours in the middle of the night trying to gut this elk. Finally, he gets mad, cuts the head off, and they're hauling it just the head down because the bears have taken the carcass, hauling the head down, and pretty soon they get followed by 3 or 4 bears to the pickup. He turns the truck lights on, and there's 3 bears standing there looking at him. Oh my Lord, that's a whole different level of hell.
Logan is a guide from British Columbia, and I've actually talked about having him on the show. And now that I'm rethinking our set, and I guess we should paint the picture, because we're on like one of the most beautiful kind of just knobs in a valley that I've ever seen. This is the most picturesque place. It seems like every sunrise and sunset was more beautiful than the next.
Well, and you could look up 3 different valleys, 3 different directions from where we were at, as far as your eye could see.
You could probably see, 20 square miles. I don't know what you could see. That's probably maybe overstating it, but it was a long ways.
Long enough you see a caribou and go, I don't think we can get there today.
Yeah, we might have to. Yeah, if we start walking, we can get there by Wednesday. It was just a place for me that like I could stay here and just do nothing, which was pretty much what we did for the first couple of days.
Yeah.
A guy was already tagged out, so he was really leisurely hanging out, playing games on his phone, just hanging out. And then at some point,
Million Hands of Solitaire.
And at some point, he's been in his tent for a while, and he pops his head out of the tent and goes, "Hey guys, the caribou over there."
We've been sitting there glassing for 3 hours.
Telling jokes. had to come out. Hey, you guys are gonna go shoot that one across the valley there? Or?
Yeah, we've been up all morning all morning since 5 a.m, glass and nothing. And guy gets out of his sleeping bag and just kind of leisurely goes, "Hey guys, what about that one right there? You think about that?"
We did. We ran over there and shot him. Actually.
Yeah. Then you went over there and shot him. That was as quick. Yeah, and the bull that I killed wasn't nearly as close.
No,
but was kind of a similar situation. You know, saw this bull, a good couple miles away on the top of a ridge. And when I say ridge, I mean peak.
Yeah,
3,000 vertical feet.
Yeah, and after seeing his, we had seen a couple of grizzlies at that point. I was a little, I would say more than a little, hesitant to go dropping down in the bottom of these brushy, brush covered river bottoms and go beating brush.
Especially after you saw a mama bear, 5 days earlier.
I've never seen anything like that. I tell that story all the time. I've never seen a bear just more ready to. I mean, she just stopped and bit a stump for no reason, just to make a point.
It's a whole different story when you're sitting up on the hill and looking down into that mess down there and watch them, than going down in it. And you sit up there and watch 2 or 3 bears go down that river. And then all of a sudden you have to go down in there. When you get down in that brush, your mind starts racing for sure.
You realize the brush is 7 feet tall, and that's a bigger bear than you thought it was. And
yeah, and you got a guy like Logan Peasley, and it's like I'm a short guy, and you guys are both tall. I'm like, well, I'm hiking around with 3 7 feet tall people, and I'm just like trying to be quick at the pace, but you charging through, and that's what we did for my bull, and then we kind of get to the base of this ridge, and it's a good, 1,000 feet up, probably. I don't know, 800 feet up, something like that.
Yeah.
Trying to think of.
You shot a true mountain caribou.
There was 2 times in this damn trip where we hiked past Doll Sheep to get to the caribou.
Oh yeah,
2 different times.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So, and it's August, so it was warm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got hiking with my guide. We hiked up this hill and got into position. I was hunting with a bow. And he said, "Hey, I have a rifle." I said, "Well, that's nice. Give it to me."
Good. Do you have bullets?
Yeah, do you have bullets? I will shoot it. And so I did. Yeah, and then you guys came up and met us, and we ended up skinning that bull on kind of a knife ridge in some shale. We had to dig a little bit of a shelf to put the bull on to quarter him up and get him the hell out of there.
Yeah, keep him from rolling over.
Do you ever think of when we were in that situation, you ever think about what your grandfather must have had to go through in this country?
I think a lot about how they did things and what they did. I think they just did everything a lot slower. Everything was a lot slower, and they were okay with that. If they took them all day to do that caribou and got down to camp and they hung out for 3 days eating caribou meat and telling lies, I think everything was just slower. We come from a fast-paced society, and when we go up into that place, we try and continue that pace, and nature doesn't like it, and they throw you curveballs like big, huge grizzly bears and 7 foot alder brush and storms, and it's just you have to just slow down and enjoy it and take a slower pace. So I think they just did everything way slower.
Yeah. I would imagine so. And then can you guys describe from what kind of what gear they had and how they tackled that country? Because I'm sure the camera gear had to be hundreds of pounds to film all that.
Oh yeah, I tangled with that camera when I was working with grandfather with Gordon. We filmed some sheep stuff one time with the old film camera. He got it out 16 millimeter, and that thing was a nightmare. Just logistically, just the battery belt alone weighs like 18 pounds, just to run it. And then you have to run, takes 2 people to run it because one has to run the actual camera. The other guy has to run the lens because the zoom, everything is manual. Mm-hmm. And you didn't know what you get. It had to be developed just like the old days of film. Remember when we were kids, you take all these photos with your camera, you're like, send off to the developing place and hope you had something worth anything when it came back.
Hopefully it wasn't a bunch of black photos.
Yeah.
I missed that. I missed the suspense of like going to the pharmacy and be like, what is in this little
Yeah,
envelope?
exactly. Now you just flip on the screen and see what you got, and off you go. So everything was just more difficult. And that's just the cameras. I mean, you're talking about the tents. I mean, everything was left over from the war that those guys used. Wool pants, pup tents. Everything was canvas or wool or leather. That's it. Yeah. It's the only materials they had. So everything was heavy, not waterproof.
Well, he tells a story about one of the guys bought a brand new pair of boots, and they're the first Vibram sold boots ever. And he took them up there, and they sored the heck out of his feet, and he ended up cutting them apart. But yeah, they didn't have anything. They had a frying pan to cook in, and that was it.
10 pounds of bacon, and off they went. Yeah.
There's another T-shirt idea for Eastman's 10 pounds of bacon and off they went.
And I think one of the most interesting things, and they get into a little bit of this in the film, is they didn't really know what was up there when he went, because Gordon had gotten, fairly noticed through his hunting and wildlife filming, and the Northwest Territory government contacted him and said, hey, you want to come up here and film, a hunt and see if this is viable to bring paying hunters in here. Because Stan Burrell, who was the outfitter at that time that Gordon got connected with, he was a buffalo outfitter in Alberta, and they had to kill all those buffalo because they got diseased. So he had no way to make a living. So the Canadian government basically gave him that concession. The entire Mackenzie Mountains. Now it's broken into 6 different concessions, but he got, I think, actually half of it. I don't think it was the whole thing, but it's just massive. Well, they didn't know what was in there. So Gordon and his buddies, the Canadian government just said, come up here, see what's in here, film it. No licenses required, no bag limits, no nothing. You can do whatever you want. We just need a report and need to be able to see what's in there to see if it's viable for outfitting. So they went in there and they didn't know if Bigfoot was in there or the edge of the earth they were going to fall off of. I mean, they had no idea. Only the native indigenous people had been in there. And so it was completely, I mean, you can imagine every night, no one knew what was on the other side of any of those ridges.
It wasn't even mapped.
No.
The maps they had were like, we think this drainage goes here because we flew over it once.
It was very spotty map just from the oil pipeline, the oil exploration.
Yeah, and he said that your grandfather in the film says like one valley is game rich. They're everywhere, and the next valley there's nothing. That's kind of the words of an explorer, somebody that doesn't know what they're getting into.
Yep, and that's the way that country is. I mean, when you're up there, you think, oh my gosh, but luckily it's changed so much. Helicopters and airplanes have changed that whole world up there.
Yeah.
For the better, for the hunter. But I mean, it's the same way. You fly over that with a helicopter, whatever, it's drainage after drainage that's empty, and then all of a sudden you find a mountain that's got 50 sheep on it. I mean, and they had to do it all by foot.
Yeah. Well, then you get to our that is a nice bridge to our friend Lee, the pilot, who was part of the Canal Road.
Oh god.
Well, that guy's a Canadian classic.
I mean, I got to go find him. I just feel like right now I'll fly him into Montana for a sit down. I mean, so the Canal Road was part of a project to build the Canal Pipeline and a road. It was from I think Norman Wells to Northwest Territories to Whitehorse in the Yukon during World War II. The pipeline's no longer there. It's like 279 miles long. I was reading earlier today, and it's really the heritage of the Northwest Territories and the Yukon during those years is World War II need for natural gas and oil, and they whacked the trail basically.
And it's up some of the craziest rivers, and one day that river could be the size of a kitchen table, and the next day it could be the size of a house. I mean, and it doesn't matter seasonality. It doesn't matter. Remember all those people? They were bikers, weren't they?
Yeah,
a whole group of gals that were looking for one part on their bike when we got there.
Hardcore. These are hardcore human beings. I don't know. It was like 2 or 3 ladies that would ride a bike on the whole canal road, which, as you said, is not really a road. I mean, it's kind of a
trail at
direction.
best.
Yeah, at best it's a trail, which is just a wild, and that's some gnarly country to be camping and riding bikes in.
They had a raft in their backpack, and they would have to blow it up to cross the river because that trail, there's no bridges left, but it crosses the river like 38 times or some crazy thing. Yeah. And they would have to shuttle their bikes across in a raft. I mean, I'm not talking about, like Ike said, a nice meandering river. There's some gnarly spots in that thing. Yeah. And they're just forging across with their bikes. I mean, those are some tough gals.
Yeah. Anybody that's in that country has to be tough, including our buddy Lee. He was our helicopter pilot, but he's also just like, if you would just picture, I'm not even sure how you like a Canadian cowboy. He had a handlebar mustache. Just, I don't know. How would you describe Lee?
He looked like, oh gosh, he looked like an older version of, oh my gosh. What's the movie? What's the
Alan Alda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he never got pressured up about anything. He was always calm, which is good to have a pilot who's always calm. But
and he had gray hair, and he had a lot of hours, which is always good for as a pilot up there. If you got gray hair, that means the guy's not dead yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
remember he had found a bulldozer back there that they had left, the government had left, and they said, if you get it out of there, you can have it. And he went in there with a snowmobile and parts and put it together, got it running, and drove it out like hundreds of miles.
You can't, there's no way we can accurately... Yeah, there's no way we can accurately describe what we're even talking about right now. There's no way. There's no way.
He had a whole album of photos from this, and I think didn't it take him a couple years to do it? He had to do it in the winter because of forging the river, so he'd do it in the winter. Yeah,
a bulldozer, like 300 miles in a bulldozer on a 100-year-old road.
It's like I said,
60-year-old road.
I think at this point, road is just a misnomer. It's just like a direction or something.
He said I spent most of the time building the road so he could keep going forward.
Yeah, with the bulldozer.
Right.
Yeah. It was like having a plane and having to dig the runway, drive the plane, fly it a little bit, land, dig the runway, fly it a little bit. That's basically what he was doing, you know.
And he had to stash fuel, and it was something. But he was a heck of a pilot. I can't remember how many hours he had in a helicopter up there, but it was a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah, I mean, and he would be close to retirement age at any level, but I don't think he was getting.
Oh, he's still up there. He's still flying.
Sure. I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, it's he's just one of those people you get into camp, and who was the old outfitter that showed up there and was hanging out with us? Was that Stan?
No,
he's way gone.
Oh gosh, it was Logan's uncle.
Everybody was Logan's uncle.
Lancaster.
Oh yeah, Bart Lancaster.
It was the dad. I can't remember his name. Is it Bart?
Is it? If Bart's the guy who's up there currently.
Yeah, that's the son. I can't remember.
There's Clay. There's a couple sons, but it was the dad, I think, that was older.
Yeah, I mean, well, either way, you get to kind of an outfitter that's been up there for years and seen this country, and these are hard people. And the funny thing that I remember from talking to these folks is they don't know how hard they are.
No.
He's talking to Lee, and he's talking about driving a bulldozer 300 miles like it's just something people do. And you just want to say, no, man, people don't do that. Well, only you.
And you ask him, you go, Lee, why did you do that? Well, I didn't have anything to do in the winter. Oh, okay. All right, then.
So Netflix wasn't good enough.
That's what. Obviously not.
I can't imagine Lee sitting down watching The Tiger King or whatever that show is. Everybody's
Have you seen? Have you guys watched The Tiger King?
I have not.
No, I've heard stories.
Well, we did a whole podcast on it. So if you want to,
I actually listened to half of that podcast before I ended up back at work, and I haven't listened to the rest of it. Well, you did spark my interest, but I think I'm anti Tiger King when I found out.
It's hard. It's hard to. It's a tragic tale, but it's so insane that you just.
It's almost hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's so out of the just outrageous in every regard.
it's like doing drugs. It's like doing psychedelics. You watch for 7 hours and you're like, I don't know what happened. I think I was in a different place. I think I may have saw some things that weren't real.
If they are real, I'm going to pretend they weren't because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to admit that that's a reality somewhere.
Now that I'm back down from this, I'm questioning everything. I'm not sure about reality. But yeah, that's I think maybe one of the things I get from this for you guys too is that your grandfather took something, and he didn't just go to the Northwest Territories. To be clear, if you start to look at Gordon Eastman's legacy, I mean, it's the North, as a general direction.
Yeah,
that is kind of baked into what he did, but he brought some things back from that made him, better, and probably made him a lot of the person that you got to know in your time with him. And then, that's passed on to you. And as we talked about in the beginning of this show, that's passed on in a weird way to your kids. And so when I go up there and I see these people, I'm like, well, I'm taking a little bit of Lee back with me and a little bit of these outfitters and guides and Logan Peasley back with me. And so I'm sure your dad did that, or your grandfather did that too, and passed it to your dad and on to you guys.
Oh yeah, I think the stuff that they learned up there, it was an adventure. So every time I've ever been on an adventure, I've learned something. If it's just from Hard Knocks or from somebody else, definitely they got something and we've got something to show for it that he passed on. You're right, absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think that's what, when this is going to be the ultimate tease, because it may be a while before you see this film. You'll have to just come back and listen to this again.
Yeah.
Whenever the film comes out. But it really is, there's not, I don't know if you guys would agree with this. It's more a question, I guess, than a statement. But, the generational story that you guys have and the impact it's had on the outdoor community, I don't think there's anything like it. Not that I know of.
It's definitely unique. I think there's a lot of great stories in the hunting industry, but I feel it's unique. Of course, we're kind of close to it, so I have a little biased opinion.
Yeah. Guy?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard to separate ourselves from it sometimes because it's our family legacy, so to speak, or hunting tradition. But I think I can't speak enough about how good of a job those guys did on that film. It really it captured the essence of that, that heritage. And it's not all about hunting. It's funny because we're into that world, the hardcore hunting world and big game hunting and trophy hunting, all that. And you kind of separate yourself from that in the film and say, this is a lot different than I would have done it. Because if we would have done it, it would have been all about the hunt and the sheep and that part of it. And I think they did a great job of telling the story from a third perspective on the family, the history and the tradition and the area that we wouldn't have seen it that same way. We could have never built that film for ourselves.
No, it's
that
impossible.
way.
Yeah, and I just emailed Ben Knight and said, hey, do you have some time this summer to film me? And then I'll give you some videos of my grandfather. Can you make one of these for me? Is that a business you want to start? Because it really feels, just from seeing you and Mike and Gordon, it just feels it's so personal, but yet it's not. It's emblematic too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we'll be able to show our grandkids, because it really puts it down, permanently in stone, so to speak, that we can pass that on down through the generations beyond us and in our family as well.
Yeah, I know you said in the film and then just this in general, like when you're going, you guys had a tough hike up to this ram, and it's it ain't easy to get there. And Guy, you were saying that you could just kind of hear your grandfather's voice, like, keep going, kid, keep pushing.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, that moment, like he's helping you get up there?
Yeah, I don't know if it sounds almost cliche to say, but you kind of hear him in your ear just saying, press on, get up there, don't give up. I mean, it was a long hike. We hiked all day. I mean, we left at right after breakfast, 7 in the morning. I think we shot the ram at 10, 11 o'clock at night because it doesn't get dark there. I mean, it literally straight up hiking all day from breakfast till 9 o'clock at night. I mean, it was not easy, like Ike said earlier, but you go to a place like that and there was just so much gravitation to the nostalgia of the area and our history there that, you get caught up in it and it makes it a little easier.
Yeah. Well, I think I learned cribbage, I feel like.
We did play a bunch of that, didn't we?
Yeah. And I feel like by the end I was licking you. Wasn't I?
Yeah.
Was I doing pretty good by the end?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think I won. I think the only game I won was the first one.
Yeah. I was playing cribbage with my kid the other day, and I think I might have lost.
Glenda still says to this day we burned up all the bandwidth for their whole entire season on the internet, the little internet we did get. But I said it was those camera guys, it was Ben and Travis.
Well, wasn't us. We're outdoorsmen. Yeah. We don't need the internet.
Yeah, we don't need that stuff.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. I mean, Canal Outfitters is the outfitting that we went with. So if you're looking for an adventure like this, Glenda and her family, it's a family. That's another family-run business. We're up there in camp, and there's kids running around, and husbands and wives, and everybody's kind of doing it together, which was cool to see.
And her dad was there, and he was a young man on the beginning of all that, knew a lot of those same
70s,
people, like Stan Burrell and those outfitters, and he had actually trailed horses out of that camp for the outfitter that bought out Stan, the next outfitter. And so he had a lot of stories about that area as well, which was really interesting to hear with common people that we knew.
Yeah, and it's funny about that too. You get in a camp like that. There's other hunters in camp, of course, and other guides, and there's a bunch of people, but kind of the unique set of characters that that country just breeds it. I think anyway.
Oh yeah.
Oh, those Canadians they're something else. A lot of them, the ones that really get out in the bush like that and spend a lot of time back in that back country, they are always interesting to be around. And the ones I've been around anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure, and it just makes everything that much better. And then, we can't get out of here without a quick shout out to all what's the hotel in Norman Wells? No, forget.
What was that thing called?
Damn it.
The guy's name was Bill.
Bill. We should have had Bill on. Now a guest appearance from Bill.
Oh my gosh, that guy was a unique character, wasn't he?
Ike and I were working there by the time we left because we got stuck there in weather. So he was having us drive the hotel rigs back and forth to the airport and pick people up.
Oh yeah,
the Heritage Hotel, everybody.
The Heritage Hotel.
The Heritage
that's
Hotel.
Right.
I saw a photo of that. I was digging through old pictures and I saw a photo of that hotel when I was going through pictures the other day, and I brought back some memories. Spent half my life in that hotel one week.
Yeah, we got stuck at Norman Wells. A bunch of weather. We couldn't fly out to camp. It was 3 days, 4 days. I don't know. I can't even. Like I said, it was
3 days. Well, I think we were there 4 days. You guys were there 3 days because you got stuck overnight in Yellowknife because of the plane.
Yeah. Yep. And then we could have made our own kind of like Tiger King style Netflix show. Just about
By the end, it was getting a little. The bar only opens at 5 and closes at what 5:30
2 hours. He didn't want to see what happened after more than 2 hours, so he'd only open it for 2 hours.
No, yeah. Then you'd go try to get food, and it would always be a sketchy situation. But yeah, the town of Norman Wells. A fantastic place. I wouldn't suggest it if you're a tourist per se.
No.
I would maybe avoid it. But if you happen to be up in that country, I would stop in the Heritage Hotel. Tell Bill we said what's up, and then tell him thanks for letting us put all our meat, all our caribou
my gosh,
and
remember
sheep
that
meat in the hotel kitchen's cooler.
Yeah.
Don't
tell the health inspector we let you do this. Okay.
Yeah, don't you put your trash bags full of caribou meat in the place where we keep the hamburgers and French fries.
There's like 7 Yeti soft sides full of raw meat stacked in the corner.
Yeah, no, I remember eating on that caribou for I don't know, a year maybe after that, and I always every time I got it out, I would I would think of like throwing bags of meat in the cooler.
I actually the other day
We just ate the last of that sheep, didn't we?
We were digging. I was digging through my freezer, and I found one thing of burger of Guy's sheep, and we had tacos was Christmas, wasn't it?
No, it was for breakfast in here to the office.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I bring breakfast one morning, and it was the last package of sheep burger.
I love it. Yeah, no, we went through that caribou pretty quick, but yeah, and that's the other thing. If anybody ever goes up north, don't let them don't take your meat back with you. There's so many people.
It's not that hard.
No.
They try to dissuade you. If you're going to go all the way to the end of the earth to get animal, bring it back. There's so many people that a lot of outfitters don't, but some would dissuade you from the effort. Please don't deprive yourself.
Well, we took that meat and stuffed it in soft side Yetis and bring it home, and it was just fine by the time I got home.
Oh,
I drove home from Edmonton, and when I crossed the border, he's like, I declared all the stuff, and he just wanted to see the sheep horns because he wanted to see how big, how nice the ram was. He didn't care about the meat or anything. He's like, no worries. But that's Montana border crossing. But they see so much of it. They're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, now if you tried to bring something exotic across or out of the ordinary, maybe, but
not that.
They didn't blink an eye at it.
No, and I don't know where the ram sits for you, Guy, but my caribou sits right above my freezer, and every time, you can't walk into my house through the garage or walk in the garage without seeing it, and I've told the story, where'd you get that? A million times, I think, probably.
Yep.
Where's the ram at now, Guy?
It's right in my living room, right above my television, so I get to stare at it every day, every night. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad eventually everybody will see this story in kind of probably the most beautiful and poignant way possible, thanks to Ben Knight and Travis Rummel, and can hear a little bit of the story now and can wait with bated breath when Yeti finally drops it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you getting the word out.
Yeah.
Thanks again for going along. It was fun.
Yeah. They had some horrible talent to work with, but the final product ended up really nice.
Well,
some great scenery shots.
Here's what I told the current Yeti guys. They were like, hey, we think you got in the film. And I said, oh, yeah, and I watched it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there I am taking a selfie with Ike. And I said, that's about a true representation of the work I added to this film. It's like just one scene of me taking a selfie. This is about the true representation of what I did in the county. But, yeah, I would just say, like, for me personally, getting to know you guys was great, but also just getting, to understand what you mean and your family means to our community, and to know that it's true and honest, and you guys are a straightforward bunch, and there's no bullshit, and I appreciate that all the way around, and that you guys are carrying that on, because I think it's important for every hunter.
Well, thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for what you do. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll get to see this sooner than later.
Yes, sir. All right, boys. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. See you, Ben.
Thanks.
Bye. That's it. That's all. Another episode in the books. Thank you to Anthony Licata, Spencer Newharth, the badass baritone, hot tub loving mushroom fiend, and then Guy and Ike Eastman from out there in Wyoming. What a great story. What a great family. Those guys truly were a pleasure to be around on that hunt, and have enjoyed my time I spent with them ever since. So we'll keep it brief on the outro. We're going to see you next Tuesday on another episode of the Hunting Collective. We got a lot of fun things in store, a lot of new giveaways, new crazy things I'm going to make Phil do, like grow his beard out for the entire quarantine. He's shaking his head no, but I think he's going to do it. And then we might even do... Phil, did I talk to you about the wheel of at-home haircuts?
You briefly mentioned it as like a tease.
Yeah, I'm thinking about buying a wheel. In fact, I've purchased a wheel where I would write like different haircuts on the wheel, and then I would spin the wheel for different guests, and whatever it landed on, they'd have to give themselves that haircut. So imagine like Tiger King would be on there, Mr. T, anything like that. Do you feel that's a good idea?
It depends how many guests would be willing to play along with your sick, twisted hair games that you force onto people.
Well, at least you. At least me, I'll do it. Will you do it? Will you, like, blood pact, bro? Like, will you do it with me?
What's that? We're breaking up. I can't really hear you.
Blood pact, I said.
Hey, what? Ben, I'm losing you.
All right, we'll see you next time on THC. Bye.
As you know, the Meat Eater live tour is on April 23rd through May 5th. Chances are in a town near you. What you may not know is you can win tickets to each of these events just by going to a backcountry hunters and anglers pint night. There's going to be a pint night in each of these towns: San Diego, Salt Lake City, Tempe, Anaheim, Boise, Sacramento, Missoula, Portland, Tacoma, where you can compete in Meat Eater trivia and win not only tickets to the show, but a chance to be on stage with all of us. So get your butt to a pint night, and we'll see you on stage.